So last page of this note set, we're going to look at an example using quantitative data. So example 1.5, haircut prices. A sample of 50 students in an introductory statistics class at Cal Poly were asked, how much did you pay for your last haircut? Please take a moment, pause the video, and then answer what the observational unit is and the variable. Hopefully for the observational unit, you started with each, because remember, we're looking at each one of this in the sample. Excuse me, there are different ways to phrase these. Don't feel like that my way of writing it out is exactly the right way. Each Cal Poly student in intro stats class, you also could have said each student in an introductory statistics class at Cal Poly. Either one would be totally fine. It gives the same information, just written a slightly different way. The variable, what's going to vary from student to student, from observational unit to observational unit, is the amount paid for the haircut. And that is quantitative in nature. Now, remember, when we're looking at quantitative variables, we need to look at the four aspects of the data. We need to look at the shape, the center, the variability, and then number four we'll talk about in just a moment. But here is the shape of the data. Here is a histogram. Obviously, it's labeled histogram, so hopefully that makes it pretty clear, versus a dot plot. Personally, when I'm doing these manually, I'll whip out a quick dot plot. And it's very clear and very easy to do just by doing little dots. Now, the histogram is beautiful, but it does take longer to do, and you have to figure out what your bins, the bin being these things here, the width of each one. So generally speaking, if I'm going to do one manually, I will do a dot plot. They represent the exact same data. If you look, frequency is just the count, and the cost is, of course, on the x-axis. Here we see that for 0, there are 6, so there should be 6 dots. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 dots. Thinking about the fact that we need to represent everyone in our sample, how many dots should there be in the dot plot? Well, hopefully you think there should be 50. If you also add up the counts, the frequency, in other words, the counts of each of these, it will total 50. Now we're given some information about the variable, the mean, standard deviation, the first and third quartile, which hopefully you remember will help us calculate the interquartile range if we need it, the median, and the general range, range being the max value minus the minimum value. Remember, each of the dots in the dot plot represents a student and how much they paid. Now it says, based on the information above, describe the distribution. First thing is think about the shape. Okay. Is this distribution skewed? What do you think? Well, hopefully you say, oh yeah, there's some weirdness out here. Is it skewed left or right? Well, where's the weirdness? It's to the right, so it's right skewed. So I said this distribution is skewed right. Most students paid between $0 and $75, while a few paid more. So I'm addressing the different aspects. So there's shape. What else do I need to address? Well, I need to address what the center of the data is and also the variability, because remember, those are 4 aspects. And then I said specifically, as the distribution is skewed, the best measure of center is median. So I explain why I'm using median versus mean. And the best measure of variability is the IQR. And here I'm showing the calculation. But you're like, wait a minute, there are 4 aspects of the distribution that, or a few, yes, 4 aspects of that distribution, that data that we need to look at. And the last one is number 4 is outliers or extreme values. Honestly, we kind of handle that by looking at whether there's skew or not. So as soon as we see skew, we know that there will likely be outliers. I'm not talking about if you've taken statistics before, I'm not talking about that. The technical definition of an outlier. I'm just saying in general, things that are outside the normal here. And we've discussed that by showing the outlier and discussing that it is skewed. Usually an outlier is just far away from the center or far away from the other values. And once again, we handled that. I'm going to say this is center and variability. And I'm going to say and unusual is handled here. So we've talked about now all four aspects of quantitative data, and so that you can actually use this data and summarize it appropriately.